I had become, without quite noticing the transition, someone whose opinion mattered. When ministers debated policy, they glanced at me, not for permission, but for registration. They wanted to know if their words would reach her ears in the forms they intended, or if some subtle translation would occur between their mouth and her understanding. I was the medium through which meaning passed, and mediums, I was learning, are never neutral. That is Anna at the height of her influence. Act 2. The Ascent. She has what she wanted. She is visible. She matters. Ministers watch her. The Empress relies on her. And she has no idea what it is costing her. Today we are going inside Act 2, the most dangerous act in any novel, the place where manuscripts go to die. Welcome back to The Architect's Method. I am Luigi Pascal Rondanini, and this is Episode 4, The Ascent. Last episode, we built Act 1, the ordinary world, the disruption, the threshold, the turn that committed Anna to her journey. Now we enter Act 2, and I need to warn you, this is where most novels collapse. Act 2 is the longest act. It typically runs 30 to 40% of your manuscript, and it has a problem that Act 1 does not have. Act 1 has momentum built in. Think about it. In Act 1, everything is new. The protagonist is entering an unfamiliar world. Every scene reveals something. The reader is discovering alongside the character. Act 2 does not have that advantage. The world has been established. The novelty has worn off. Now you have to sustain interest through a long middle section where, structurally, your protagonist is supposed to be succeeding. This is the trap. The protagonist ascends, things go well, and the writer thinks, what do I write about when things are going well? The answer is, you write about the cost, the machinery, the thing that is tightening around your protagonist while they are too dazzled by success to notice. Act 2 is not about success, it is about the price of success, a price that will not come due until Act 3. Let me give you the structural principle that drives Act 2. The protagonist gets what they wanted, and that getting contains the seeds of the fracture. This is crucial. Act 2 is not a plateau. It is not a holding pattern between the exciting beginning and the dramatic crisis. It is an engine, and the engine runs on dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the reader knows something the protagonist does not. In Act 2, the reader should begin to sense that something is wrong. They should see the machinery that the protagonist is blind to. In The Reader of the Empress, Anna rises. She becomes Catherine's most trusted translator. She is invited to policy discussions. Her analysis shapes decisions. She is exactly where she wanted to be. But the reader sees what Anna does not. Her translations are being used for purposes she does not know. Her presence in meetings is not neutral. It is surveillance. The trust Catherine shows her is also a trap. Every success binds her more tightly to the machine. The reader feels the noose tightening. Anna feels only the glory of Ascent. That gap between what the reader perceives and what the protagonist understands is the engine of Act 2. Let me walk you through how I built this in The Reader of the Empress. Act 2 spans chapters 6 through 11. 6 chapters, about 21,000 words. Chapter 6, The Mask of Mercy. Anna is asked to translate a document about criminal reform. Catherine is presenting herself as an enlightened monarch, merciful, philosophical, modern. Anna's translation will shape how this policy is understood across Europe. On the surface, Anna is doing important intellectual work. She is contributing to enlightened governance. Underneath, she is helping construct the mask. The mercy is performance, and she is becoming part of the performance apparatus. I rendered Catherine's words into French with the care of a jeweler setting stones. Each phrase calibrated to catch the light of European opinion. I did not ask whether the policies described would ever be implemented. That was not my role. Anna is already compartmentalizing, already choosing not to see. Chapter 7, The Reunion. Anna encounters someone from her past, a scholar she corresponded with before coming to court. He is visiting St. Petersburg and seeks her out. The reunion is warm, but it illuminates how much Anna has changed. She finds herself guarding her words, performing even with an old friend. The court has infected her. This chapter serves a structural purpose. It shows the reader what Anna is losing: her authenticity, her directness. The very qualities that made her valuable are being eroded by success. Chapter 8. The Anatomy of Obedience. Anna is asked to analyze a set of intercepted letters, correspondence from provincial nobles expressing dissatisfaction with new policies. Her job is to assess the level of threat. She does it brilliantly. She identifies the rhetorical patterns that indicate genuine sedition versus mere grumbling. She categorizes the letter writers by danger level. She does not ask what will happen to them. I had become skilled at a particular form of not knowing, the kind that allows the hand to continue writing while the mind looks elsewhere. It was not ignorance, it was discipline. This is the heart of Act 2. Anna is complicit. She is choosing not to see, and she is calling that choice discipline. Chapter 9. The Trial of Silence. A courtier falls from favor. Anna witnesses the machinery of destruction, how someone is unmade through whisper campaigns, strategic exclusions, the slow withdrawal of imperial attention. She says nothing, does nothing, watches. The chapter title is The Point. This is a trial. And Anna passes it by, remaining silent. Her silence is rewarded with continued access, continued trust. Silence, I discovered, was a currency. Every word I did not speak purchased another day of proximity to power. Chapter 10. The Winter Audience. Anna is granted a private audience with Catherine. They discuss philosophy, genuinely, intellectually, almost as equals. It is the most intimate scene between them. Catherine reveals something of herself, her loneliness, the impossibility of trust in her position. Anna feels, for a moment, that she truly knows this woman. The reader should feel the seduction. This is why Anna stays. Not just ambition, connection. She believes she has access to the real Catherine, beneath the mask. But the reader also sees this intimacy is another form of binding. Catherine is making Anna feel special, making her feel chosen, and chosen people do not leave. Chapter 11. The Mirror Breaks. The Act 2 turn. Anna discovers something, not the full truth, not yet, but a crack in the surface. A document crosses her desk. A list of names, some she recognizes from her earlier analysis. The letter writers she categorized by threat level. Next to their names, notations, relocated, detained, no longer corresponds. She understands, in a flash, what no longer corresponds means. I set the document aside, as though it were merely administrative. My hands did not tremble. I had trained them not to tremble. But something behind my eyes shifted. Some lens that had been mercifully out of focus now clicking into terrible clarity. That is, the Act 2 turn. Not the full fracture, that comes in Act 3, but the first crack, the moment when Anna can no longer fully sustain her, not knowing. The Ascent has reached its peak. Now there is nowhere to go but down. Here is a diagnostic I ran on my first draft of Act 2. The manuscript's middle section shows pacing issues. Chapters 6 through 9 maintain similar intensity levels, creating a plateau effect rather than escalation. The protagonist's complicity is implied but not dramatized. Recommendation: vary chapter intensity and add at least one scene where the protagonist actively participates in something morally ambiguous, not just observes it. That diagnostic changed Chapter 8 entirely. In the first draft, Anna merely read the intercepted letters. In the revision, she analyzes them. She categorizes the writers. She creates the document that will later be used against them. The difference is enormous. Passive observation does not create complicity. Active participation does. Your Act 2 needs this. Moments where the protagonist does something, not just witnesses something. They must be implicated by their own actions, not just by their presence. Every act ends with a turn, a shift that propels us into the next movement. The Act 1 turn answered. Will the protagonist stay? The Act 2 turn answers. Can the protagonist continue to not know? This is subtle but crucial. Act 2 does not end with catastrophe. That is Act 3. Act 2 ends with the first crack, the moment when the protagonist's defenses begin to fail, when the carefully constructed not knowing starts to collapse. In Chapter 11, Anna sees the list. She sees the notations. She understands, almost against her will, what she has been part of. But she does not act. Not yet. She sets the document aside. She continues her work. She tries to reseal the crack. The Act 2 turn is not revelation followed by action. It is revelation followed by attempted denial. The protagonist sees and chooses one more time not to see. That choice is what makes Act 3 devastating. Anna was not blindsided. She had a chance to wake up. She did not take it. When the full truth arrives in Act 3, it arrives for someone who could have known sooner, and that makes it unbearable. A practical note on pacing. Act 2 is long. If every chapter feels the same, the reader will lose interest. You need variation, in intensity, in type, in focus. Here is how I paced The Reader of the Empress Act 2. Chapter 6, High Intensity, Policy Work, Moral Complexity. Chapter 7, Lower Intensity, Personal Relationship, Breathing Room. Chapter 8, High Intensity, Active Complicity, Dread Building. Chapter 9, Medium Intensity, Observation, Consequence Witnessed. Chapter 10, Low Intensity, Intimacy, Seduction. Chapter 11, High Intensity, The Crack, The Turn. The rhythm matters. You cannot sustain maximum intensity for 6 chapters, but you also cannot coast. Think of it musically. Tension and release, tension and release, building toward a crescendo at the turn. Let me show you what Act 2 planted for later. The analysis document. Anna's categorization of threats in Chapter 8 returns in Act 3. She discovers her own work cited in the execution orders. The fallen courtier, the man destroyed in Chapter 9, becomes a mirror for what could happen to Anna, what will happen if she is not careful. Catherine's intimacy. The private audience in Chapter 10 makes Act 3's confrontation possible. Anna believes she knows Catherine well enough to challenge her. She is wrong. The list. The document in Chapter 11 returns, expanded and horrifying, in the archive scene of Act 3. Every thread planted in Act 2 will be pulled in Act 3. This is the architecture. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is decoration. The ascent is not separate from the fracture. The ascent creates the fracture. Everything Anna gains is also what she will lose. Here is what I want you to take from this episode. Act 2 is not the middle of your novel, it is the engine. It runs on dramatic irony, the gap between what your protagonist believes and what your reader perceives. It builds through escalation, through internal conflict, through the accumulation of complicity. Your Act 2 must give the protagonist what they wanted, show the cost they do not yet see, build the machinery that will fracture them, plant every element that Act 3 will need, end with a crack. The first failure of not knowing. If your Act 2 does this, your reader will feel the dread. They will see the catastrophe coming. They will turn pages, not to discover what happens next, but to find out if what they fear is true. That is structural suspense. That is architecture at work. Let me leave you with one more passage. This is from Chapter 10, The Private Audience, when Anna feels closest to Catherine and most certain of her position. "You understand me," she said, and for a moment I believed I did. For a moment I believed that understanding was possible between two people separated by such vastness of power. For a moment I was foolish enough to feel safe. The moment passed, but I did not recognize its passing until much later, when safety had become a word I no longer understood. Before you go, if you are struggling with your Act 2, the custom GPT can help. The Rondanini architect's method can diagnose whether your middle is carrying load or just filling space. It can identify where you need to plant foreshadowing, where you need to show the machinery, and whether your Act 2 turn is doing its job. Link in the show notes. The companion workbook has a specific exercise for Act 2, mapping the gap between what your protagonist believes and what your reader should perceive. If those two things are identical, your Act 2 is flat. The exercise helps you build the irony that creates tension. Next episode, the fracture. We enter Act 3, where everything Anna has built comes apart, where not knowing is no longer possible, where the cost comes due. Until then, build well.